Hey guys, what's going on? This is another Outdoorsman 1 video. Today we're going to be talking about snorkels. Okay guys, so since I've installed the Dobinson snorkel here on my truck, and recently since I've installed the Snorkel upgrade Cyclone pre-filter or pre-cleaner, I've been getting a lot of questions about the effectiveness and also the why and just the reasoning behind having a snorkel on my truck. It is quite windy out today, so if my microphone isn't doing its job, then I will reshoot this video inside. But I camped out here last night at this beautiful spot here above Utah Lake, and I thought this would be a beautiful spot to shoot the video. Okay, so let's talk about the basics behind snorkels real quick. The idea of a snorkel is to replace your factory air intake from like right here on a Tacoma. I don't know where it is on your vehicle. I know, like, for example, my WJ, my Jeep Grand Cherokee, it's on the other side. So those are really the only two vehicles that I know where the air inlet is, so you're gonna have to do your own research. When you're driving in four-wheel drive, you're kicking up a lot of crap. When you have wide body fenders like me, or you have oversized tires and you've torn your fender liners out, that leaves your air intake very exposed to water, dirt, mud. Anything that gets kicked up goes straight in there, because if you think about it like the end of a vacuum, because your motor is sucking air, you think about it like the end of a vacuum, how much crap is going to get pulled into your air filter and eventually gunk up your air filter. So you are taking your air intake from right there and moving it up here. Let's not talk about this right now. Imagine I've still got the little scoop here. The little scoop like that on here. That's pretty standard. That's what a snorkel is. You're moving your air intake up. So I do have quite a bit of experience in dusty climates that are not here in the US. I'm talking about down south and places where I've been. And I'll tell you what, snorkels are very, very effective against dust. Some people are going to tell me, oh, you're BSing, but no, I'm not. Especially if you're talking about like on a turbo diesel truck. I know I've driven the Nissan Navara and the Nissan Frontiers down in South America. I've driven Ford Rangers, the Ranger Raptor. I've driven a lot of these vehicles that are diesel, so obviously they've got a turbo, which means they're sucking a lot of air to force it into the engine. And I will tell you what, snorkels have a massive, massive, massive difference when you're talking about air and the ability to maintain the same amount of power off-roading when you're wheeling in a convoy of vehicles in a dusty climate. Let's talk about some of the reasons why you would want to. One, because I think they look cool. That's reason number one why I did. I live in the high desert here in Utah, which means I'm driving across salt, I'm driving across snow, I'm driving across a lot of dirt, and that dirt gets real silky. So the nice thing about bringing your air intake up to 3 feet is when you're driving in a convoy, stuff is getting kicked up. There's no defeating that. But the higher you are off the deck, the less and less dirt and silt and particulate there's going to be in the air. That's just gravity. Obviously the heavier stuff is going to stay lower and the lighter stuff is going to be up higher when we're talking about kind of a dust cloud. So the stuff that's getting taken in up here is going to be a lot finer than what would be down here. Also, you're not kicking that stuff directly into your air filter. The real reason why snorkels were first invented and why you see them on Humvees and why you see them on military vehicles is for water foraging. Obviously, if you've ever lived in the South or a place where there's hurricanes or something like that, you've been exposed to hurricanes and you know that that hydro locking your vehicle will total the vehicle. We don't want to do that when we're out off-roading, because these are usually our daily drivers and we want to be able to get to work on Monday at 6 o'clock when we need to clock in. So that being said, we're going to move our air intake up here, which means theoretically the vehicle is watertight. Honestly, in the almost year that I've had this Snorkel equipped, I'd say 8 months now. In the 8 months that I've had this Snorkel equipped, I've only been in water once that I really questioned, and I still probably would have driven through it had I not had a snorkel. So whenever I hear anybody talking about snorkels and, oh, so I can cross water, I'm like, these trucks are so light that if you're up to here in water, you're already making enough questionable decisions that I'm judging you. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, you can't go through a little creek bed or something like that, go to Onion Creek. If you're going through that intensive water, you might want to invest in a little bit bigger vehicle, something that is heavier and isn't going to get pushed around as easily by the current. We all see pictures and videos on social medias of people with their vehicles rolled over in a creek bed because they tried to cross water that was too deep. River crossings are really dangerous, probably one of the most dangerous things you can do in overlanding, because water crossings are just so unpredictable. I try to avoid them. I know there's some places where you'll drop in and you can see I've got mud here coming out of my snorkel area, and we'll kind of talk about my setup in a minute. But you know, people who talk about snorkels like they're, you know, using them to cross water is crazy to me, because I'm like, well, the seals in your truck probably aren't going to withstand it, so you're going to get water in there. You've probably got 500 light bar wires going through your firewall, so you're probably going to get water shooting through there. Then plus your battery and your alternator and all those things that really shouldn't be submerged too long. So unless you put a lot of work into making your vehicle completely submersible, I don't want to hear you make that argument. But if you want to make the argument like I do about dust and dirt, all good, and I'll back you up any day of the week. Also, if you think they're cool, kudos. Okay, so talking about some other things that if you do decide, hey, I want my truck to be pretty water resilient, that's a fair point. I mean, if you live in Louisiana and, you know, you want to be a yee bro that goes out in the hurricane to go get some bread and some water, kudos, cool. Put a snorkel in your truck. I'm good for it. So a couple things else that you might want to consider is most air boxes on trucks like this, most air boxes have a little drain hole for if water does get into the air box from the stock air inlet, that it'll drain out. You might want to consider plugging that if you are worried about getting substantial water intrusion. Also, your rear and front differentials, they're called diff bleeders. They're the little thing that's on top that nobody knows to clean off, so if you ever are spraying your truck down after the winter, I would suggest spraying those down. Try not to get water in there. But when you go to change your diff fluid, you can tell if water got into your diff because if the way that the oil is. But they're little diff bleeders. ARB sells a really good one. I don't have it installed. It's actually sitting on my project shelf at home. But the diff bleeders are a good thing. Pretty much what they do is they're just a snorkel, a hose, right? That goes onto your diffs and then comes up to like your firewall, and you mount it like up there on the inside of your hood. So you're raising that water intake level. So let's kind of talk about the last thing of why I have a snorkel. I have a snorkel because I really like the look. I like the way it looks. I think it gives your truck kind of a little bit more of an intense off-roading look, and yeah, enough said. But I think that having a snorkel, with the amount of convoys that I ride in with Utah Overland, if you're here in Utah, check us out on Facebook and Instagram. I'll leave the links everywhere. Utah Overland. With the amount of convoys that I ride with Utah Overland and the amount of dust that this truck gets exposed to, I think that having a snorkel has helped. I run K&N filters, the reusable filters, and I've definitely had to replace and clean less since having installed the snorkel. Some of the downsides of having a snorkel are during the winter, oddly enough. If you live in a place like this where it snows or where it rains a lot during the winter, and you have just that big cup, you have that big air scoop, you are literally ramming snow and rain in there. So it's kind of against the purpose of what you've installed your snorkel for. You can turn the head around, which until I installed this is what I did this winter. This was the first winter having the snorkel, so I just had it turned around. I've never had any issues, but I would not like to discover issues. So let's talk about this for a second. This is a Cyclone snorkel upgrade pre-filter. I'll leave you a link in here that'll save you some money if you want to buy one. These pre-filters are pretty cool. The science behind them is as follows. If you ever see like a Dyson vacuum, the idea is they're spinning the air inside the vacuum, and they can use less filters and stuff like that because they are spinning the dust out of the air into the kind of the dust trap. So that's kind of the idea. You're using kind of a centrifuge to move your heavier items outward. So if you can see this here, it's shaped like a kind of like a beehive. Haha, Utah. So it's kind of shaped like a beehive, kind of a dome, mushroom tip, if you will. And it's kind of shaped like this. So inside, you've got the air intake right here. The air goes in with all of the particulate, and there's a blade in there that spins, obviously faster and faster, the more air that's required for your engine. So the more that you're on the throttle, or the more that you're revving it, the more that that's going to be spinning, because it's just spun off of the vacuum. But that blade is going to be spinning, which is going to carry all of the dust and particulate to above this level, which on this side there's a vent that expels all of the stuff that has been clung to the sides in this centrifuge. That's the way that it works. It has snowed a couple times, and I have driven through some dust, and I looked at my air filter and there was absolutely nothing. So some people say that these filters are BS and total gimmick. I think it works. The science behind it works. So I'm not gonna draw any conclusions there. I like the way it looks, and also anything that I can do to save myself having to replace air filters and stuff like that. Preventative maintenance is always good in my opinion. They're a cool company to work with. They've reached out to me before. So I like them. Decide for yourself if it's worth it to you. I mean, I know military vehicles use them. I've enjoyed having the snorkel. My situation is a little bit complex, and I would move the camera to show you kind of my complex situation with the snorkel, but I have a nice little windscreen setup that's hopefully deflecting the majority of the wind from my camera. Obviously, because my fenders up front are 2.5 inches wide. If you have any questions about that, refer to the video. I'll link it in the card above about the McNeil fenders. Also, rear fiberglass will be going on soon. But so I had to kind of make this very special because this whole truck has moved out 2.5 inches and 3 inches over here. So my snorkel has to kind of set recessed, and then I've got this beautiful little setup up top for how it mounts. And in my opinion, having the ability to conquer a little bit more on the trail is never going to be a bad thing. So it's null and void to me. I stand by snorkels on vehicles, especially when you're running convoys or running through silt. If you don't have one, you will wish that you had one in those scenarios. So that's my opinion from personal experience that I offer to you as free advice. Okay guys, so if you don't like snorkels, or if you disagree with some of the things that I said, however, those are your opinions, and I really don't want to argue about them because I've formed my opinions in factual situations. I would like to hear from you down below. Add some comments. Make sure to like this video. Share it with your friends whenever they ask you about snorkels. I'm trying to get these answering questions about why do you run an annex, or why do you have solar on your camper, or why this, or why that, or what kind of tactical pants are you wearing? I'm trying to answer these questions so that you guys get a little bit more value out of this channel, Outdoorsman 1, not just about the truck, about everything. Oddly enough, this video is about the truck. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching the video. Remember, be good, be dangerous, and be ready. We'll see you on the trail.